everybody. Welcome to our latest edition of Science Bytes. I am Miss Nicole of Bloomfield Public Library, and today we are going to be making a homopolar motor. And I will be honest with you, this project is going to be a little bit trickier than some of our previous projects lately. It's a little fiddly, so even though there aren't a lot of steps involved in the project, you may have to do some tweaking and adjusting to get things to work just right. But before we get started with our project, like always, I want to talk about some of the science behind what we're doing. We actually have a couple of different scientific things happening with this project. We're going to be dealing with push and pull forces and magnetic forces and an electric circuit. So we've got all sorts of things combining. So first, let's talk about magnetic forces and push and pull forces. Here I've got a pair of magnets, one blue, one yellow, same magnet. And the thing with magnets is they have what we call two poles. There's a north pole and a south pole, just like planet Earth. And you may have heard the phrase before, opposites attract. So right now my two magnets are stuck together and they'll snap together if I pull them apart because their opposite poles are connecting. One of the north poles and one of the south poles are connecting. But if I flip this blue magnet around, I cannot push these magnets together. I have this little pole right here that came with the magnets. As you can see, I'm going to slip this on right now. And we've got the two opposite sides that are attracted to each other. And if I flip this blue magnet around, you can see how they don't want to get together because like poles are facing each other. I don't know if it's the north or the south pole with these batteries, but two of the same poles are trying to butt up against each other and that force is pushing them apart. One of the things we'll also be using today is a battery. And a battery, like a magnet, has two opposite ends, a positive end, which is usually the end with the little knobby, and the negative end. And with a battery, they do a nice job of helping us out by labeling the ends too. We have positive and negative. And with the battery, we are going to create a circuit with some wire. And basically what that means is we're going to make sure there's a connection that starts at the positive end of the battery and also loops back and touches the negative end of the battery. And I have a fun little toy to demonstrate how we make a circuit too. I have here is my energy stick. It's actually Steve Spangler's energy stick, and it's supersized. Whenever you can go supersized, that's the way I like to do it. So this is my supersized energy stick, and it's going to help us create a circuit. Think of a circuit like a big circle. So if I hold just one end of my energy stick, nothing happens. There might be energy passing through my body and through the stick, but it's got nowhere to go. It can't complete its route, can't complete its path. But if I touch the other end of the energy stick, I've completed that circuit. I've made a full circle. Now this is the part of the project where it's going to get a little tricky. The steps are very simple. The trickiest part is going to be shaping your copper wire. Because here's the situation. We have our battery. We're going to attach some magnets. And when we create our shape of our wire, we want the wire to touch the positive end of our battery, but also to touch the magnets. And that's going to help us create our circuit and create the two forces that are going to move our wire around the battery on its own, like a motor. That's why it's called a homopolar motor. And so I'm going to give you a template that might help with the shaping of the wire, but I'm also going to show you how to do it on your own, because there are a lot of different shapes you can make this wire into. There's not just one correct way to do it. I'm going to go for a very simple shape because I want to up our chances of success. But once you get the hang of it, you can have a lot of fun designing your own homopolar motors at home with just these few simple materials. So here are the few simple items that we're going to use to create our homopolar motor. We've got our AA battery, and I'm going to provide all these items for you in kits that you can pick up at the library. So we'll have a AA battery. We have 3 neodymium magnets, and we're going to use them together because we want as strong of a magnet as we can get. So we have 3 neodymium magnets. We have a couple of washers, And these are just going to help us stabilize the wire. So as it spins around our battery, it won't go flying off. It may still fly off at some point, but this will help us along a little bit. And we've got some copper wire. I'm actually going to give you two kinds of copper wire. I have a 22 gauge and a 24 gauge. The 24 gauge is actually a little thinner and a little easier to bend. The 22 is actually a tiny bit thicker. So it might give you two different options for shapes and projects that you create at home once you get the hang of this. But I'm going to demonstrate today with the thinnest and the easiest to bend, and that's the 24 gauge. So step one is definitely the easiest. We're going to take our 3 neodymium magnets and just stick them onto the end of our battery. And we're going to stick them on the negative end of our battery, the flat side. And that part of our project is done. And you'll see you can actually get your battery now to stand up straight right on top of those magnets. Now I'm going to give everybody about, a 6 to 8 inch piece of copper wire. This might be more than you need, but you can always trim and make it a little bit smaller. This is the shape I'm going to have us going for. So you can see the point at the top is what's going to rest on the top, the positive end of our battery. And the bottom end, we want it to touch the magnets, but you can see how I have the sides coming out far enough so that they're not hugging the battery. They have to be able to move freely around the battery. So the first thing we want to do is actually bend our wire in half. We're going to have the two ends meet, and we want to create a point at the top. We're going to pinch it together, just like that. So we've created sort of a point at the top. And now we want it to come back around. Think of it almost like an M. So we want it to come back down, and you want it to be about the same way on each side. Like so. And you can go into the center there and pinch that together a little more if you want, now that we've done that. And you can see how I'm kind of making sure it stays wide, because again, I don't want it to hug the battery. But now what we need to do is figure out how to position it so it will touch the magnets. And you can do this by actually just holding it in place on top of the battery and seeing where it meets the magnets. And I can see it's going to touch about here. I'm going to make a little bend there just so I see where my right about the right length. I'm going to turn this to the side a little bit. I'm going to do this. And so these two now, if we look at it from the top, should be able to touch our magnets. We might want to poke it in just a little bit so it's a little narrower, like that. That seems pretty good. So this is our better angle. So you can see it right from the side. We've got our battery sitting on our magnets. I'm actually going to adjust it a little. It looks a little crooked. So I'm going to make sure it's even there. And now here's the one we just bent and created, our wire. And now we want this point to touch the positive end of our battery. And actually, we're going to use these two washers to help prevent our wire from flying off our battery top. They aren't going to sit super secure. They're going to create just a little nest at the top that'll hopefully keep everything in line. So I'm going to put this now onto, I can see already that it wants to do something, but it's not quite touching the magnets. So I'm going to adjust. This is the part that gets a little fiddly. I'm going to make it just a little bit longer. Make my bend at the bottom just a little bit longer. Make sure it goes in towards the magnets. All right. And now one side on either side. Let's see if we've done it. Ooh, you can see it wanted to do something. And this, my friends, is science. I think I made this piece of wire too small. It's not able to wrap around enough at the bottom end. So I have cut a longer piece of copper wire. And we are going to do exactly the same thing to bend it into shape. I'm actually going to create a little bit of a bump. So there's a spot for it to go around the magnets. But you don't want it to be too much. Now I'm going to stand my battery up again. Make sure it's on my magnets. I'm going to put my little washer up there. I might be able to get away with one washer. Let's see. And I'm gonna see. Ooh, I think it's too, I made the bend a little too high up. I'm gonna make it a little lower. Ooh. And I don't have it touching the magnets. And there we go. As you saw, the first time I created my little wire shape, the wire was a little too short, so it wasn't able to complete that circuit properly. And then I made this very wonky shaped one, but it had a lot of extra wire, so I had plenty to work with, and I started with my bend up here, and I realized it wasn't long enough to touch the magnets. So I had to drop it down a little lower, so I did my bend to make sure that this part touched the magnet, this part right here touched the positive end of the battery. Now, this is a very wonky shape, and if I were doing this at home, it's very easy to just use a regular pair of scissors now and trim this. So once you know you've got something that works, go ahead and trim off some of this excess copper wire. And here's where you can play with the shapes. Some people create heart shape. Some people create a spiral that goes around the battery. There's all sorts of different shapes you can use for your wire once you get the hang of it. And that's our whole project for today, a homopolar motor. I hope you had success with it at home. Remember, don't give up. It is a little fiddly, but you just have to fine tune it a little bit until you get that connection just right. I will include something like this, some sort of template that'll help you in that initial shaping of the wire, and that'll hopefully help you with your success rate the first time around before you start playing with things. Now remember that I created kits for everybody. They'll be available at both of our locations. They'll have the neodymium magnets, they'll have the batteries, the wire. I'll give you several pieces of wire too, so you can do more than one homopolar motor shape, once you get practicing with it. And I'll even give you some little washers to help you stabilize that piece of wire on top of the battery. Once you get the hang of making the homopolar motor, then you can really play with it and turn it into a real science project. Try making it with different size batteries. Try a AAA battery. Try a size D battery, one of those big batteries. Try it with different magnets. Neodymium magnets are great because they're small and they're super powerful. But it might work with another kind of magnet. You might find that, what happens? Does it work? If it works, does it go as fast as it does with the neodymium magnet? Is it slower or quicker? These are the elements that are going to turn that into a science experiment, our project. So feel free to take this project one step further or two steps further and test out some of those different things and compare and see how they work differently. And take notes. Make sure you always document what you're doing so you can remember the next time you want to do the project. One final word of caution. You will notice as your motor starts working that the wire, and I'll just hold up the shorter one, as it's working, the wire will actually heat up. It's not going to get so hot that you would burn yourself, but it will be hot enough that you might kind of, that's a little warm. So it's best to run your motor for short spans of time. You can watch it for a little while, but just be aware that the wire itself and probably even the battery a little bit will get warm to the touch, and that's totally normal. So don't be worried about that, but just be aware that will happen. So until next time, my friends, enjoy this one. Stop by the libraries to pick up your supplies. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk with you about the project in person or over the phone. And I hope you guys enjoy some of this nice weather we're starting to get. So have fun with this one, everybody. Bye for now.